Well, welcome, Keith. How are you?
It's great to be here.
Oh, man, thank you for coming into the Real Talk. It's so fortunate to have you. I mean, there's so much we can get into. But first, I want to say, how are you? How's everything?
I'm feeling great. It's not a small thing to live in Southern California during this period of time. It's a great place to live. You know, we're locked up, but we're locked up in a nice place. Life is good. I can't complain. I've got good conditions, great family, great job, great friends. I mean, great dogs. I mean, overall, it's all good.
Oh, I know. I mean, of course, this pandemic has changed our whole lives, but just like you said, it puts things into more perspective, how fortunate some of us are in things we have, and to really be thankful for a lot of things.
Absolutely.
But overall, I mean, there's so much to unpack. Where you got all this gear, robots in front of you.
Toys, books.
Yeah, but first, let me introduce yourself, Keith. Yeah. This is Keith Strier from NVIDIA, and introduce, what do you do? Who is Keith Strier?
Well, I'm only newly from NVIDIA, so I joined about 20 months ago. Okay. So definitely my background's much deeper than I have. Everyone's got a story.
Yeah,
my story. So I grew up in the Northeast. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually born in New York State. Grew up both in New York and New Jersey, so kind of a tri-state guy. Never lived in Connecticut, but lived in New York and New Jersey on and off for 32 years or so. So that's my background, and lived both in the suburbs and in the city. And I love New York. I mean, I've been to almost every major city in the world. I've had the privilege of traveling extensively, but I really consider New York home. It's a great city. So I grew up in the Northeast. I went to Cornell undergraduate, and that was just a great experience. Loved Cornell, and it's just an incredible campus, incredible environment. I didn't know how lucky I was. You never do when you're that age. I look back now, and it's just what a great college experience. And what I also didn't know at the time, but now it's so interesting to look back, is that Cornell played a very big role in sort of the beginning of that sort of internet, the explosion. Yeah. And this is something that most people don't know, but there's a very famous story. If you go back onto the internet and you Google for the tidal wave memo, okay? This is a very famous document that's on the internet, and it's a memo that Bill Gates wrote to his employees, okay? And it's I forget the exact year, but basically this is the moment that it occurred to him that they were going to lose their supremacy in the technical sort of market, the technology world, if they didn't pivot to the internet. They hadn't quite pivoted yet. I think they were dipping their toe, but they hadn't.
And what year was this in?
I don't remember. I mean, we just Google it right now. No, seriously. If we literally look it up right now and type tidal wave memo, it's quite it's a famous document. May 26, 1995.
Oh yeah, mid-90s.
So so it comes up. So and it was about the internet tidal wave. Okay. And so again, it's a great memo. But here's the thing. He wrote that memo after coming to Cornell. He was wandering the campus.
Oh, wow.
I forget why. Maybe he was doing a lecture or something. But he was at Cornell, and he had seen the adoption of the internet on the campus. People starting to use the internet. People using email. I think that was one of the turning points for him. I'm sure there were others, but that was one of it. And he went and wrote that memo. And that memo is the reason why Microsoft is still here today. And it's a great memo actually if you read it, because you see this is a leader who said, "Wow, we're missing it, and we got to change everything, or we're not going to be relevant anymore. There's a new world order. We got to get on board." So it's pretty cool. So anyway, Cornell was great. Then I went to NYU Law School, and my passion was not really law. My passion was to be an entertainment agent. I was going to be Tom Cruise.
Oh, show me the money.
Show me the money.
Oh.
So I had done some cool things. I had been a personal assistant to Art Garfunkel, Simon and Garfunkel. Even before that, I was actually close with Helen Hayes, who's the first lady of the American Theater, and I had spent a lot of time with her, and before she passed away, and in that time period, I just got to do a lot of cool things. I mean, I was having dinner with Tony Bennett and hanging out in the recording studio with James Taylor, and I just I was on tour with Simon and Garfunkel at the time when they reunited back in the 90s, and so I had some cool experiences, but it turns out that I really didn't like the industry. It just wasn't for me, and so after giving it my all, so I went to law school, and then I just realized I didn't want to do that anymore. So I actually stayed. I didn't drop out, but I barely went to class, if I'm totally honest. By my third year, literally wasn't going, and I was pleading with professors not to fail me. Because I did want to get my degree, but I had become an entrepreneur, and I started my first company while I was in law school in 1994, and it was not a technology company. It was a business development company, but facilitating deals of all kinds, but primarily in healthcare. But I kind of went into that, and I graduated in some May or June, forget, of 1996 on a Friday. Rudy Giuliani handed me my diploma because he was officiating. This was at the big Javits Center in New York City. He was the man.
Yeah, he was the man back then.
I got my law degree from Rudy Giuliani. There's an irony to that, which I'll come back to. but and then I went back to work on Monday. I never practiced, never took the bar. And I spent most of my 20s struggling. I mean, it was not like I wasn't like an instant success. But like many entrepreneurs, you have a lot of failures and one success. And I happened to negotiate a deal, which is with another interesting anecdote on the internet. The very first, do you know who the very first sort of .com to exit, to actually have an exit in the internet era? Most people don't know this. Was back in 1995, also 95 or 96, I forget. But the first company to have an exit was Monster.com.
Oh, really?
Which is the recruitment
company.
Yes. Okay. They were very early in the internet scene.
Correct.
Okay. And there was really no IPO market at that point. There weren't billion-dollar IPOs yet. Yeah. That came a few years later. But they were founded in Boston. They had built up a nice brand as one of the very first sort of commercial internet sites, for job classifieds, and a much bigger but not a well-known advertising agency, which was a billion-dollar publicly traded agency called TMP Worldwide in New York City, bought them for $25 million. And that was a big deal. Yeah. I mean, that was
back then it was a very big deal.
I mean, that to buy a website that posted job ads for $25 million in '95 was a big deal. So that was their exit. And as an entrepreneur, with a small company in New York at the time, I forget how I got connected to them through some mutual connection. But basically, I ended up on the couch with the CEO, who was this actually older gentleman. I mean, at the time, he was probably in his 60s. He was a very wealthy man. He was the CEO of this billion-dollar advertising agency no one ever heard of. And by the way, it was in a really crazy, boring part of the world. They actually dominated the Yellow Pages advertising. I mean, it doesn't get any less interesting than that. Remember, I mean, a lot of people maybe listening to this don't even know what Yellow Pages are. But at the time, Yellow Pages was this big book dropped on your front porch every year. So it happened to be a very niche part of the advertising agency. They owned that. They bought the job classified site, thinking this would be a great way for them to kind of back into internet, which was smart, very, very smart. Anyway, at the time, I'm sitting there on the couch with Andy McKelvey, the CEO of the company, and negotiated a deal with him and to help his new job board get some deals. And he gave me a huge chunk of stock. And he said, look, trust me, this will be valuable to you. And honestly, I had no idea. I had never owned a stock option in anything in my life. So he paid me some cash. He paid me some stock options to facilitate these deals. I was much happier with the cash. I put the cash, used the cash for the business. I put the stock options away and forgot about them. 3 years later, they're worth millions of dollars. Because 1999, you had irrational exuberance. You had this incredible, ridiculous sort of explosion of .coms. Then you had billion-dollar valuations. That was kind of the beginning of that. But at that time, these were companies with no revenue getting multi-billion-dollar valuations. So anyway, that I did all that, and then I went to the consulting industry, and I pivoted to consulting. I spent 10 years at Deloitte, and that was amazing. That was great. I became the first chief digital officer of Deloitte and helped build out their digital infrastructure and back in 2012 and 2013. And I kind of got into developing apps and all these kinds of things. And that was great. And then
that was the trajectory it launched you to the technology.
It was.
side,
I mean,
right?
I was mostly focused on healthcare.
Okay.
I mean, technology in healthcare was most of my career up until that point. I was kind of the emerging tech guy in the healthcare practice, and that was great. And Deloitte's great, and I'm still good friends with a lot of the partners. But I pivoted when the iPad came out. I got one right there. Yeah. But if you remember the iPad 1, I mean, do you remember the iPad 1?
It was a bulky, small.
It was a brick, right?
Yeah, it was a brick.
It was heavy, but it was. It felt like a game when it came out, and in 2011 or so. I remember I got it. I'm like, wow, this feels like a game changer. The form factor for computing felt like a game changer. And I remember I actually took the CIO, Larry Quinlan, out to lunch at Deloitte at the time. I said, hey, have you seen this thing? I put up the iPad 1, and he's like, yeah, I've seen it. I said, look, I'm thinking, why don't we design some apps for our partners in the firm, help them do their job better on the iPad. I bet they would like using the iPad even better than a laptop. And he's like, that's a pretty good idea, actually. You have some. So I sketched out my ideas. I put together a plan. He liked what I was thinking, I had never developed an app before. No idea what I was doing. I was completely
you never coding and all that stuff.
No, I can't do any of that. But I had
a vision.
I had a vision. I had some instincts, and he said, "Look, I'll partner you up with a more technical guy, and why don't you guys figure it out?" And he did. Actually, that guy, his name is Todd Scott. We're very good friends to this day, actually. What started out as an idea for an app turned into a suite of apps called Edgefolio. What was a small project, which probably had a budget of like $50,000, ballooned to many times that, and what I thought would be just like a little part-time, little effort on the side, and hey, wouldn't this be fun? Turned into a job, and over the course of a year, Edgefolio went live. It turned out to be enormously successful. In fact, one of the apps in the suite was a travel app that was so well regarded that Apple named it one of the 12 best enterprise apps in the world.
Oh, wow.
In 2012.
So this wasn't just for internal.
No, it was internal. It was an
Okay.
enterprise solution for our firm.
Okay.
But they were showcasing how companies were innovating on their platform.
All right.
And so they had sort of this section of enterprise apps. You couldn't download them. They were trying to showcase how companies were innovating.
Okay.
And this was selected as one of the top 12 for
Wow.
2012. And so it was, I discovered in myself kind of this app designer and whatever. And that's when the firm said, hey, why don't you just do this all the time? Why don't you just take over create the digital platform for the firm? So I did that. And that was an amazing experience, and I had a lot to learn. I made plenty of mistakes, but I learned and I figured out, and I had some natural instincts for it. So I led that for a while, and then I went to Ernst & Young, another one of the big four, I worked there for a while, and then I ended up founding the artificial intelligence practice, and then led the AI practice globally for EY before coming to NVIDIA.
What year was that with EY of the AI? When did
Well,
that start?
I joined EY in 2014.
Okay.
But I didn't really look before 2016.
16, yeah, AI wasn't.
I wasn't focused on AI. In fact, I couldn't tell the difference between a neural network and a social network. It was not on my mind. I've read what other people have read, but it wasn't really a focus of mine. But it was what put it on my radar was actually the World Economic Forum. So the World Economic Forum had released a paper, I think in January of 2015, 16, but in that time period, basically on this concept of the fourth industrial revolution, which has gained a lot of traction now as a term. And it was a really good document, and it basically, and it wasn't just about AI, but it really was about that. We're in the new industrial revolution. These are not just technologies; these are general purpose technologies that are going to change everything, and people need to pay attention. And so I was really inspired by that, and then I started to pay attention, and what I saw very clearly that was within the broader technology and more specifically the digital realm. AI was emerging as one of the key enablers of what's next, and it didn't matter where it was, whether it was in manufacturing, whether it was in customer service, whether it was in auto. It doesn't matter. It was very clear to me that AI was going to be the pivot for a lot of business transformation. So I pivoted my focus, and inevitably I founded the practice at EY. I was doing that for a couple of years, and one of my focuses as part of that global AI leadership role was I started to advise governments on their national AI strategies, and that was a real privilege. To be in the room with a cabinet or a prime minister or whatever, and being able to really talk to them about not just this cool technology, but here's how it will change the future trajectory of your country. Yeah. Here's how it might change the prosperity or security. These are really amazing conversations. And so I had the privilege of writing and co-writing and advising on a number of countries across Europe, primarily on their national AI strategies. And it was that work that caught the attention of NVIDIA, and that's when they gave me a call.
So now, as the VP of Artificial Intelligence Initiatives, right?
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah.
Initiatives. So what is that? I think you just hit the surface on that. What does that entail? What is your job?
I'm mostly focused on growth.
Okay,
I'm mostly focused on growth. Where are there opportunities to help entities in the public and the private sector adopt accelerated computing to drive their AI agenda? That's the main thing. That plays out in different ways. My primary focus is on the government right now. That's just a huge opportunity. And it's not just sales. It's really about strategic engagement. And so I spend a lot of time actually in almost an advisory capacity.
Correct.
So the truth is nearly every government on earth understands that AI is important. And many of them, maybe as many as 60 or 70, have national AI plans. But that doesn't mean they really understand it. And even if they have a plan, that plan isn't complete and that plan hasn't been implemented. And so there's just still a lot of work to be done. And there's still a lot of questions to be answered. And so I'm sort of one of the people, and my team helps them think through some of the aspects. Obviously, from NVIDIA's perspective, our focus is infrastructure, right? So I'm not getting into every aspect of their policies, but infrastructure, the computational infrastructure that makes AI possible is very complex. Most people don't understand it, and governments in particular don't understand it. And so they're, as they move from talking about, hey, AI is super important, to, hey, we need to do this. What do we need? It's part of my job to help them think about it. And it's not just about what do you need from NVIDIA. I mean, I try to be objective and provide good objective counsel. Here's what you need to be thinking about in general, across the board to solve this problem. And then, of course, NVIDIA has a role in that.
Yeah, because as I listened to one of your presentations, democratizing AI. So basically making it available for all scales at any level. Doesn't matter how much you know about AI, but making it available to all nations, as you would say.
That's right, making all nations. All nations AI nations. Yeah, and actually, I'll give my CEO Jensen Huang. These are his words, and so he is deeply committed to the democratization of AI. And I think if you look at the overall tech landscape, different companies are doing that in different ways. I mean, I don't think there's one formula for that. So you look at the cloud companies like a Microsoft and Amazon and Google and so forth. I mean, nobody has democratized access to AI as much as they have. I mean, the ability to just tap into massive AI infrastructure in the cloud in a very agile way, to burst it when you need it, and to do it small when you need it, do it big when you need it, and to do it affordably and efficiently. And the cloud is just, the public cloud has really played a pivotal role. But within the cloud, the cloud is just a data center. And so in that data center, or in those data centers, there's technology. And NVIDIA is one of the technology providers in the public cloud or in a private data center or whatnot. And our technology is often the engine that's driving a lot of the AI, right? And so we're part of that formula for democratization. And our role is really twofold. One, we have just these incredible engineers that are inventing the future every day, and it's the future of this technology means making it much more powerful and much less expensive, right? And that's kind of the trajectory of Moore's law. But the fact is that in general, compute continues to get more powerful and less expensive, and that's super important. I mean, here's a great example. So this really illustrates the democratization. So let's go back in time to 2009, I think. So IBM unveils the Roadrunner supercomputer. And you can look this up online. And this in 2009 is the first time that a supercomputer achieved what's called 1 petaflop of power. Doesn't matter to go into what that means.
It's 1 quadrillion, right?
It's 1 quadrillion. It's a lot of mathematics per second. You're doing a quadrillion calculations per second, right? And a specific kind of calculation called a floating operation. I mean, it doesn't matter. But we achieved, the world achieved this sort of performance level of 1 petaflop. But what's interesting is it cost about $120 million at that time, which is a lot of money. But that's what it costs to achieve that. Now let's jump ahead to today, right? So that's 2009. So now we're more than a decade out, right? Today, a single petaflop is about 50K.
Wow.
So to go from 120 million to 50,000. Now, why does that matter? So we actually have a server now called the Dgx A100, and it's the world's most powerful AI server. I mean, it's incredible. It weighs about 260 pounds. It would fit on this table, about half the size of this table, and it's dense, and it has 8 of our GPUs in them, which are each GPU has like 58 billion transistors on it, and that's like mind blowing.
Yes.
When you think back,
in a discrete model, people don't realize that's like a city.
No, exactly. I mean, when you think back that the first radio transistor had 4 transistors in it, 60 years ago, and now we're at 58 billion. So it's very powerful, and you've got 8 of them in this machine. Right. But this box cost, I don't know, a couple $100,000. That's about what it costs, and it delivers 5 petaflops of power. So 1 server. And it sits on this table, right? And you compare that to a room with like 60 cabinets filled with hundreds and hundreds of servers, right? And 100 million, right? So why is that important? Back to your point of democratization. Because at $100 million, most countries on earth can't afford that.
Yep.
At $100 million, most companies on earth can't afford that. At $100 million, most laboratories, most corporate research departments can't afford that. But at $200,000, or $1 million, that's actually within reach. That's doable. That now you're talking. Now, small companies, startups, research labs, universities, small countries, they can afford to have supercomputers.
Yeah.
That means they could be doing the kind of research and AI development and the kind of mathematics that leads not only to scientific breakthroughs, which is great, but it leads to business innovation. It leads to the discovery of new kinds of materials, new kinds of batteries. It develops language models that power things like Siri.
Yeah.
You can't do that without the computational power. And when only a few companies or a few countries own those computers, that's a problem for the world. So there is this this idea of the compute divide, which is kind of sort of the new version of the digital divide, which is still a problem, but has more to do with like bandwidth. Like who's got access to a phone and that kind of thing. So now you've got this compute divide, which who has access or who has a supercomputer. And the truth is, it's still a problem. You have kind of the wealthiest countries. So there's 180 or 190 countries in the UN. Only 30 have a supercomputer.
Yeah, I think it's I think the leaders are U.S. and China are the leaders, right?
U.S. and China own 2/3
wow.
of the world's supercomputers. Sit in two countries, and China has more than the U.S. The fastest computer in the world today, and this changes every 6 months. There's a list, literally, top500.org. Every 6 months, they run this competition, more or less. It's running constantly, but they reformulate the list officially every 6 months. The fastest computer in the world is sitting in Japan right now.
Okay.
And Japan, doesn't have the most number of computers, but they're always kind of at the top of the list as far as speed and performance. But China and the U.S., head to head as far as hundreds of supercomputers. Right, and then you have countries with 1, countries with 5, countries with 10, and then you have many, many, many countries with nothing, and that matters now. It didn't matter 5 years ago. That mattered because those countries couldn't compete effectively for the Nobel Prize, and researchers that wanted to do the most cutting edge stuff in astrophysics or computational fluid dynamics or even even drug research, they would have to go to the countries that had those machines. But now it's not just about science. It's about business. It's about general economic growth and competitiveness. And I think it's that realization that is pushing everyone to make these investments.
But going back to that is like in the last decade or in the last 5 years, the transformation of the acceleration of technology, it was, I would say, Moore's law. And I know you talked about there's Wong's law, Jensen Huang. Yeah. He has his own law.
Well, it's not his. Yeah. It was a journalist from the Wall Street Journal, Christopher Mims, back in I think September of last year, so 6-7 months ago, had basically said, people continue to argue as to whether Moore's law is dead or not. The Moore's law is based on manufacturing innovation, essentially, right? It's just the ability to put more and more transistors in the same that sort of transistor density, and you're going up against the laws of physics at that point. What Christopher Mims acknowledged, but certainly was talked about before that, what he acknowledged is that the pace of innovation in computing power is no longer just about how many transistors you can put. I mean, that's still important.
Correct.
All the architecture in terms of how the chip is designed and even the microelectronics around it are important. But now and I think NVIDIA really gets a lot of credit, and Jensen and the executive leadership team who made decisions many years before I came on board, is that they started to focus and shift their focus to software. And I think I read somewhere that everyone in Silicon Valley knows that 70% of the value in hardware is software. Right. But when it comes to AI chips and sort of that this talk about niche space, the sort of the space, there is a hyper focus on just the pure manufacturing sort of capabilities and how many transistors and all these things. And what NVIDIA really shifted over the last 10 years is say, look, we'll continue to be amazing engineering organization focused on chip design, but let's also become amazing at software. And today, NVIDIA has more software engineers than hardware engineers, which is not something people realize. And actually, when we look at our stack, when we wake up,
the dog is barking.
Well, listen, this is the age of pandemic.
This is age of pandemic. We have animals around.
I've done plenty of video conferences where my little angel Pomeranian has jumped in my lap and is licking my face. So it's totally cool. But the amount of software you need to create value from the hardware, right? The operating system, the libraries, the tools, that makes it that's a lot of the value. So what Christopher Mims basically said is now the pace of innovation is really a formula of the hardware times the software, and the software is not updated every 2 years. It's up every day, right? So the curve, the arc of innovation is much steeper, and so you're not looking at doubling the power every 2 years. You're talking about doubling it more than once a year, and so it's exponentially steeper. And so over the course of 5 years, the power of the system has improved hundreds or thousands of times. Even though we've only rolled out, say, 2 or 3 generations of chips, we've updated the software and improved the data science around it such that it's hundreds of times more powerful. And that does make things possible that weren't possible before.
It accelerates. I mean, for our industry and the supply chain semiconductors in general, the size of them, we know like the TCM sees all of this. It used to be 7 nanometer, 5 nanometer. Now we're going to 3 nanometer. When that goes smaller, the form factors are smaller. Then you could put more transistors, more power. You have a board right here showing us with this computing power. So this is
it's an older generation.
It's an older generation.
Yeah.
But these power that this has is phenomenal.
It's amazing.
But as you say, is the software, sometimes the hardware is there. The software is just catching up with the algorithms, putting into the mathematics,
That's right.
behind it to be able to accelerate the power out of these. People say, well, when it gets to heat dissipation, what happens? Well, they are powering these, and that's why GPUs are being so critical into AI, any type of infrastructure, because AI today, of course, people talk about 5G networks for data transfer. That goes into the AI of everything has a brain.
Yeah.
And how you come back to like Microsoft has the basic platform. They have a brain in the sky. Anybody can plug into it. Mm-hmm. So does NVIDIA is building that platform. But one question I have for you is, people always ask, okay, so we have NVIDIA, we have IBM, we have AMD, we have Intel. What is the difference between these companies, and are they making just chips, or are you making architecture? What is the difference?
I think the difference is the business model.
Okay.
And nothing I'm saying is not in the public domain. I think the reason why NVIDIA has done so well, and again, I take zero credit for this, is because the leadership team, Jensen and the team around him, realized years ago that while we're going to continue to compete on engineering, we need to have this full stack innovation model. Mm-hmm. We have these slides that we show internally, and at the bottom of the slide you'll see our chips and sort of our servers sort of at the bottom of the slide, but they're just at the bottom. They're not the center of the slide. They're at the bottom of the slide. And on top of that is our operating layer, the CUDA, which is our unified development architecture, and then on top of that, we have all these software libraries and tools that make it easier for data scientists and engineers to get their work done, that are in containers and things of that nature. And then on top of that, we've got industry vertical solutions and that we've built that really help vendors in specific industries like healthcare and retail and auto tap into the GPUs at the bottom of the slide, but to accelerate, to do their job, and pre-baked models and all these kinds of things. And then on top of that, we have a partner ecosystem, and so you look at this stack, and frankly, that stack was not easy to build. It's still evolving, but it represents like a decade and billions of dollars of investment to build that. And I think the best way to think about it is this: we all remember when the iPhone came out.
Correct.
2007, and at that time, it looked pretty cool. I think everyone felt like this was cool, and Steve Jobs did a great job introducing it. Hey, it's phone, it's a calculator, it's this, it's that. But in the 2 or 3 years after the iPhone came out, how many times did you see headlines where they'd be like, "Oh, this is HP's rolling out into this. It's gonna be an iPhone killer," and Nokia's rolling out. It'll be an iPhone killer, and then they roll out the iPad, and then Dell's rolling out a pad. It's gonna be an iPad killer. But they all failed. And why did they fail? They failed to kill the iPhone and kill iPad because it wasn't just a device. The device was a platform. And on top of that platform, you have millions of developers who created a business, right? You have millions of artists who were selling their music. You had millions of just individuals had become sort of addicted to, or at least accustomed to, running their lives on the technology on that phone. And so you had this incredible platform and these ecosystems of creators and artists and engineers and developers. That's what made the phone unbeatable, essentially. Of course, Android and another ecosystem grew up around, and there's a nice competitive ecosystem there, but you don't find there's not 5 of them, right? It's basically 2. There's iOS and Android, right? So I think what I have come to appreciate, and what I believe Wall Street has come to appreciate, is NVIDIA is no longer a semiconductor company. It's no longer a gaming company. It is an accelerated computing platform company. And on top of that platform, there are millions of companies, data scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, researchers, companies, and governments now who are building their capabilities on that platform. Some of them are doing it for pure good purposes, like to monitor conservation and to look at beach erosion. So some of this is for public purposes, and some of this is for science, and some of this is for business. But it is a platform, and that platform is very, very sticky, just like the iPhone is very, very sticky. So I hate that. It's kind of a very cliche thing to say, because I don't know that I would call NVIDIA the iPhone of semiconductors. I don't know that is a right thing to say, or I would characterize it that way. But there is a parallel in terms of the business model, and that we do not think about our company as a semiconductor company. We think of our company as a platform company. And that platform is rich, and we have nearly somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million developers now around the world that are certified and are building technology on top of the platform. And again, hundreds and hundreds of companies, lots of governments, so from that perspective, I think that's the secret. It's not a secret, but I do think that is the answer to that question.
It's looking, your perspective is having a large, widespread perspective than just looking at, hey, we're a chip company. And that's why, because of course, NVIDIA is known with gaming. Everybody knows from the 2000s when it started coming out, NVIDIA. But today, how you articulated really well that you're not just a gaming or chip.
We love gaming, by the way.
Yeah, gaming is
it's a good chunk of the business, and it's the heritage of the business. But here's an interesting anecdote on the gaming part, because this is so interesting. So the company was founded about 30 years ago, right? And it was founded by gamers. I mean, Jensen and his pals were they were engineers, they were gamers, and they did very much want to make gaming beautiful and engaging and immersive. I mean, that was the goal. I think you'd agree, if you were a gamer in the early 90s, games were not that interesting, not as exciting. So they wanted to unlock the imagination by allowing games to start to take on, the sort of the color spectrum and the dimensionality of life, and traditional processors, CPUs, couldn't handle the mathematics for that. So they invented the graphical processing unit, to solve that problem, right? And it took a few generations before they got it right, frankly. I mean, I think the first one didn't do so well, but by 2000 they had nailed it, and I think, and NVIDIA, and there were a lot of other competitors making graphics cards, but they all fell away. Right, so that was the heritage. What's so interesting is, of course, that business has grown very successfully, very profitable, high growth, and it wasn't really until 2010, 2012, like around then. So now you're talking almost 15 years after the company was founded, that the company realized that AI would be the next application on top of its architecture. And the initial, all the profits, all the ability to invest in AI came from gaming, right? I mean, that was the
computing power.
Yeah, But so what most of these young men and women around the world who just game all the time and buy NVIDIA cards don't realize is that they have been subsidizing very directly the investment in what became the platform that launched the modern era of AI. Gamers didn't know they were doing that, but that's exactly what happened. And gaming today is still it's a very, you and I were talking earlier, it's the number one sport in the world, the number one source of entertainment in the world, and something like 70 million, 70% of all the gamers in the world get lost in these synthetic worlds that are not possible without NVIDIA. And we're thrilled for that, and that won't stop. But the success of that business unit enabled us to expand into high-performance computing, artificial intelligence, and now autonomous machines. And that's why I brought this little robot. Yeah. So we can talk about autonomous machines, because that's kind of fun, too.
So we get to that robot. My question that people would say is, we discuss is like, what's the difference between automation and AI?
Yeah.
What, people think, I mean, of course, we see movies back then, like the Terminator, we got Skynet's Live and all this. But what is the automation and how is AI?
It is a little confusing, to be honest. I mean, I'm not as good as even my CEO in explaining it in the crisp, clean way that he does. But he refers to AI as the automation of automation. But let me break that down. So automation, if you look at the Latin root of the word robot, it means to work. Or actually, I think it means slave, technically. but it's basically work, right? And robotic really refers to accomplishing a task. Okay? And if you can codify that task in a set of rules, then you can just program that task. If this, then that, right? Very simply, right? So if you see light, if your sensor senses light, then turn off the porch light. Like, and if it senses darkness, turn the porch light on, right? That's a robot. That's a rule, okay? And you don't need artificial intelligence for that, right? Because that's a rule. You can codify that, essentially. So that's an automation. There's this rule, and it's a program, and it's automated. Artificial intelligence is the automation of human-like cognitive function, which is more than a rule. So if you're just using rules, then that's robotic. But if you need a human-like cognitive function, then you have to go beyond a robotic architecture. So what's a human-like cognitive function? I mean, that's a lot of words. I mean, literally something that would normally require a human to do. So, for example, historically, machines could not recognize face. It wasn't possible. You could detect the presence of a person, like a motion detector, but you wouldn't know who that is. I mean, you'd know there was a person walking by, the light turns on, right, or triggers an alarm. Okay? That's some kind of simple motion detector. But you don't know who that is. You don't know what their gender is. You don't know their race. You don't know if they're happy or sad. You don't know what their last name is. You don't know anything about them. You just know that some object walked past that sensor, right? Those are human skills. You need a human skill typically to identify emotion. You need a human skill to look at someone's face. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's that person, right? Even to tell whether they're old or young or male or female. So those are human-like skills. So artificial intelligence as a technology can emulate human-like cognitive function. That's one way to look at it, right? And so if you can emulate human-like cognitive function, then you can automate it. Because if you can actually create a system that could perform that function, well, then essentially you're automating that function. So it is the automation of automation. But there's an interesting implication there, which is that traditional software, I mean, all the software that's ever existed since we've been writing software is essentially programmed to meet a certain requirement. That is, I want to write a software that does this. And so, you do it or you hire people to do it. And basically, classical computing is written to spec, right? Okay. So, but humans write the software. That's how that works, right? I mean, that's why you have a lot of programmers. So artificial intelligence, when you get to the more advanced forms of artificial intelligence, which is referred to commonly as deep learning. And that's really that's the crux of everything that's really interesting today. And we can come back to that. What's really interesting about it is that deep learning, and this is an epiphany most people don't get unless you're really, really in the weeds and you're super geeking out. AI systems write their own software.
They learn.
But in the process of learning, they're writing their own software. Okay, so what does that mean? The implication is massive, because we have a world now where we decide we want a computer to do a certain thing, we spec it out, and then we pay someone to either write software or we buy a piece of software that meets those requirements. But these are learning machines. Now what you do is you architect a model, and you do need human ingenuity to do that, obviously. Then you feed that model knowledge. Now that knowledge can come in the form of images. It could be sound, it could be words, it could be anything, some kind of experience. It could also be literally the experience of doing something, like driving on the road. That's an experience, right? And then it learns, and in that process of learning, this neural network, this actual digital version of the neural network, it actually creates its own neurons, and it learns and writes its own software. And so you no longer need a human no one's programming that. It's learning itself. And this is why we have the entire sort of explosion around self-driving cars, which are, which are just mind-blowing, the amount of technology inside these machines. But if you go back 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, I mean, there was a lot of early experiments with these self-driving autonomous cars. The problem at the time one of the problems is that they thought they had to program a car that could drive. See a stop sign, stop. See green light, go, right? So they tried to encode all the possible permutations of driving. It's impossible. There's billions upon billions upon billions of possible permutations. There's no way to encode that. What they realized with the sort of innovation around deep learning is you don't need to program a car to drive. You got to build a car that can learn to drive, just like a human. Yeah. And then let's put it on the road, or even more interestingly, let's put it in a virtual world, in a simulator. Let this brain work in a simulated world and drive like a video game, and figure out what not to do. And you know what? We can even speed that up because it's a game. So what might seem like a week is really a year. And so over the course of a month, that virtual car may have driven 50 years. Yeah. And so it's learning. And it's running into trees and having accidents and doing things, but it's learning what not to do. And it's learning. And so the reason why we have the possibility now of autonomous vehicles is because they've learned to drive. They've been driving for billions of miles. and it's not fully ready yet in every respect. But there are cars on the road, there are trucks on the road. I mean, we're there now. We're at that early stages, and you know, going forward. And here's the prediction: it's 2021. Your grandchildren won't need a driver's license. They just won't. I mean, you know, your kids will. They'll have a lot of options in terms of driving. They'll be increasingly more autonomous. They'll park themselves. The cars will come to you. I mean, they'll start to do those things like they do now. But by the time you have grandchildren, they won't be driving. They won't even be steering wheels in cars by then. So the movies will arrive.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points because all that information is data. They need to do the algorithm with data. So I mean, we take it to like the good old Tesla and Elon's brainchild of the data that they have, the billions of miles that all their cars are running.
Billions.
And they're using that data in simulation.
That's right.
Now come with computing power.
That's right.
The acceleration of computing power is allowing them to be able to accelerate the learning process.
That's exactly right.
Correct?
That's
and
exactly
to be able to get through this and to be able to have a full self-driving car where their cars right now could pull out of parking spots, could actually drive, but it's not legal yet, but they do have the capabilities. Because there is difference of like, there is what Elon had, the sensor. It all comes to the hardware too. There is the LiDAR, there's a LiDAR way, or there's a sensor way of data.
Basically video. You can even just use video.
The video,
just using the images.
Because LiDAR is an image based that, I mean, I've geeked out on that a little bit and how it works and how that, but
they're expensive.
It's expensive. But when you go to a database with sensors, it's as you say, continuously learning. It's learning the roads. It's talking to each other. It's a neural network.
And it's not just the car itself. If the car is connected to the network.
Correct, to the network. Yeah.
So there's the sort of this. It's a hive. Yeah. You know, all the cars are learning, and it's called transfer learning. So as one car learns, it shares the knowledge with the other cars. And then they share it with the mothership. I mean, it's pretty mind blowing.
And I know right now in the trucking world, they are getting into that with the trucks are talking to each other.
That's right.
To draft off each other.
And trucking will come first. Yeah. So I mean, everyone kind of indexes on cars, but trucking you'll see autonomous trucks first because the commercial proposition is there, right? I mean, cars are complicated. You know, it's a much simpler deal to drive on a highway than to drive in a city, right? Or on just a suburban environment. So highways are more predictable, linear. There's still risks, obviously, but it's an easier problem to solve. And the commercial proposition is there because you have these expensive trucks with drivers, and that's a money-making proposition. So they can calculate very, very easily what is the pain threshold for paying for an autonomous truck versus, whereas individuals, I mean, the reason why you can't buy a fully autonomous car right now, I think, it's because it's so expensive. It just doesn't make sense. The economics don't make sense yet. I mean, there's too much technology in there, but the cost comes down every week.
Scales, yeah.
Yeah, it scales. So, but you will have it. I mean, within a few years, in 2024, 2025, I mean, you're going to start to see large-scale deployments of increasingly autonomous machines. And it's not just trucks and cars. We're talking boats, planes, trains, anything that moves will be. Actually, I was my son went to visit a college campus a few months ago. He's senior waiting, and he was at George Mason University out in Virginia, and on the campus there are robots
cruising around
delivering food
to. Oh wow!
Because George Mason had signed up to be one of the pilot sites for one of the companies. And so there's just robots everywhere, and they see you. They don't run into you. They know they can see the full environment. They stop and they're very courteous. They give a little beep beep, and they let you know to pass. And they stop at curbs. I mean that they're learning to be very courteous, coexisting robots within that world. That's going to happen. So in my role, I have the privilege of working with governments all across the world, and it's really great to see what they're doing. And this is coming. I mean, the cities are preparing to have machines, delivering food, delivering products, sweeping, doing security checks. I mean, you're just going to have an increasing presence of machines, but there's no one with a joystick in the corner going, go here, go left. Yeah. These are autonomous machines. Humans can intervene and turn them off or direct them, but most of their functionality will just be them executing their job. And making decisions all throughout the day, and we're getting close to that.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. You look back, it's like I'm like in Vegas. First time I ever experienced a robot. In the hotel, the robot delivered the food.
Yeah. Oh, to your hotel room?
To the hotel room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and it came and a robot butler, and it opened up.
Yeah.
Because then in your mind, is someone controlling this? Does someone see me? Does someone?
Well, I think they may have a camera. They may be able to do a quality check.
Yeah, I think they do off cameras, but they're autonomous.
They're autonomous.
They're autonomous. Yeah. They're going through, unless I think there's a warning and someone comes in and does them. But these are, it's fascinating because as the simple human, you're like, how is this working? How is this functioning? But there's so, as you say, layers, so many layers.
Well, it isn't one system. Yeah, so within a robot or a self-driving car, any kind of autonomous machine is going to have multiple AIs within that machine. There'll be one that's doing the pure navigation. Then there's one that's doing this sort of the image sensing. There's one that might be listening. There's one that's thinking of the tasks that have. There's one that's so there's actually going to be multiple AIs, each trained to do a certain task, leveraging either a certain kind of data, like a sensor, and they all work together. And they're working at a speed that's mind-blowing, right? Just going back to speed, because this is one of the themes I think gets lost. You actually explained it very, very well earlier. The acceleration, right? It's not just the ability to do a task faster. That's true. But it's the ability to master a task. And this is something it's a nuance that gets lost, right? So, I'll give you a good example, right? If you go back to the sort of the early days of supercomputing versus chess players, right? And the famous sort of IBM sort of chess match, the amount of time it took to actually train those supercomputers, it was measured initially in years. Then it became months, and so they got better. The machines got faster. They got better at the science behind it. So they were able to train these machines faster and faster to be these chess gurus, right? But more recently, in the last few years, what was weeks became hours. And the reason why that's important is because it's not that this supercomputer just learns to play chess or even learns to play it well. It learns to play it better than any human has ever played it. And it learns it in maybe 4 hours.
Yep.
So what's the implication of that, right? The implication is it's not – so people think about automation. Okay, I can program this machine to do a task, right? Or that's version 1. Version 2, I can program this machine to learn to do a task. And then it's just doing it. That's great. Then there's version 3. I can create a machine that can not only learn to do a task, it can do it better than humans. And then there's version 4. It can learn to do it so fast that it can master that skill better than any human that's ever lived or who will ever live. And it's doing it in minutes to hours. So the implication of version 4 is that as a tool for humans, as we identify tasks that really we don't need to be doing, that we can hand off to machines, right? Because ideally we don't think of it as a competition as much as a complement, an augmentation of human capabilities. We can have machines not just do things for us, but they can do them better than we ever could. Now, look, some people might be scared by that, but let's put that in the context of medicine, right? So it's very, very likely, within your lifetime, not your children's lifetime, your lifetime, that if you come face to face with a significant clinical condition, that that your doctor will not be making a human-based diagnosis, that they will be relying largely on a machine to make. Now they will confirm that diagnosis, they will confirm the treatment, and they will communicate that to you. That's the human part, right? They will be the final arbiter, right? But you will not have confidence in that diagnosis if it was not backed up by AI. Because the reality is humans cannot look at as many images. They cannot study. They can't keep up with medical journals. They can't keep up with progress like a machine can. So why would you not lean on that? And I think they've more than established in multiple fields of clinical medicine, particularly in radiology and other sort of diagnostic fields, that humans plus machines lead to much better and more accurate diagnosis than a human alone. Right?
I completely agree. And that's what taking one step back and jumping from the chess to the medical is people watch The Queen's Gambit. But it's a good, simple illustration of how someone's mind works like a computer.
Yeah.
It sees before, it can predict the next move. But imagine that's just a human learning that skill, a computer.
And a rare human.
That's
a 1 in a billion human that can operate at that intellectual level, whereas we have the ability to create thousands of machines that could do that. And if we could task those machines against some of the most complex problems that humanity faces, then we could solve just the amount of progress that we can achieve. And everything is just, it's beyond, it's mind-bending.
It's mind-bending. And then goes the medical side is right now, simple form is Google. Everybody, you really don't need to go to a doctor for simple colds. You can go to symptoms.
That's right.
The data is there. The data of all is Google is there. It's kind of computing power. It's showing you, but mostly it's forum-based. But it's actually not giving you a diagnosis. It's just giving you from basic form information that doctors have put or other people put up there.
That's right.
But then goes the medical side is we're dealing with a pandemic. The last year, probably 2 years it's going to be in. And computing power has also allowed for the vaccines to be accelerated for testing, for the algorithms, how fast that can come. To your point, that's what's changing our lives. It's changing medical practice.
Right. It's not theoretical. It's very real.
And a lot of people out there that are afraid of certain things because this is not real, but the vaccines today are so much more powerful, more effective than they were 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago that we use, because we can do the a machine can do the algorithms through the front and every case scenario. Yeah. What happens? It can compute it, which is so fascinating to some, as I said, again, to the simple humans to understand.
Yeah, the impact is real. So I'll give you two quick anecdotes. So early on in when the pandemic hit, there was we developed a list internally. So this is, I think, March or April of last year. We were looking at some of the companies in the healthcare space that we NVIDIA thought would be playing a role in the pandemic and who were customers. And so we developed this internal list, and there was like 25 companies on that list. One of those companies was Moderna. Oh, they were a customer. We didn't know at the time that Moderna would evolve 6 months later as one of the three companies, but they were one of the companies using our technology to accelerate their drug discovery process, and we were super excited when it turns out that they're one of the really big contributors. I mean, we take great pride in that. That's a tremendous source of pride. The other thing is that early on, also, and this is a great example of acceleration. Just that the one of the fastest computer in the United States is called Summit. And it's in the Oak Ridge National Laboratories, and it has something like 25 or I think 28,000 NVIDIA GPUs. I mean, it's just super, super powerful, right? And so normally when a drug in the process of drug development, you're trying to work your way through molecules to identify a target for development. It takes a full year, to work through 1 billion compounds. That's kind of in January of 2020. That's what a researcher would say. Well, if we're working our way through a library of 1 billion compounds, and that takes about 12 months. So working with Oak Ridge National Lab and researchers from a number of organizations, we help them leverage the Summit computer to specifically target and that process. And what would normally take 12 months, we got down to 12 hours. So think about that.
Wow.
So if it takes 12 months and you're hoping to find a needle in a haystack, because there's just no way to go around that. You got to work your way through those billion compounds. And now you can do that in half a day. That's a game changer, right? I mean, it's not just a matter of doing things faster. And one of the things that Jensen described, one of the ways he likes to describe that, because I don't think faster or even just covers it, he would use that example as really turning these supercomputers into time machines, right? Because you're able to literally jump through time, right? Because hey, it's going to take us a year to do this. Let's get to work. Actually, I think we get this done by 10. I mean, it's like that is the operational equivalent of a time machine, right? And so if you can accomplish a 12-month task in 12 hours, then you are literally porting through time. And the impact on humanity is huge, right? So if you apply that same logic, and so you're talking about millions of percent acceleration, right? Not 10 times, 20, but millions. You can just imagine that across every possible thing, in business and in life. I mean, it is, again, the implication is huge, but that is a big computer. I mean, again, that's a billion-dollar machine, right? Not everyone has that. But the systems are getting more accessible. They're in the cloud. They're in cars. They're in everything. They're in personal computers. I mean, you can now buy a gaming laptop that's pretty darn powerful. Actually, we're doing this really cool project right now. It's not public, but we're about to announce a partnership with a large NGO, non-government entity, to put essentially a laptop, but we call them data science workstations. They're very expensive, actually. I mean, I think they're about $10,000. Very, very, very powerful laptops into these labs across Africa where they've never had anything like this. And we don't have to give them. I mean, this is for them. It's a supercomputer.
Yes.
But it enables them to what might take them a week, they can now do in 10 minutes, and they can do math and they can do data science they could not do, and so we're just really excited. And it's gonna be in like Zaire and Kenya and all these countries, and we're just super excited. Just a small piece of technology can have an enormous impact.
That's your piece of leveling the playing field,
That's
democratizing
That's right.
of
That's right.
it, which really comes back to that is giving the access to everybody globally to have some type of supercompute power. Right. what it comes to be. But one question I have, I think some people would ask is, out there is like, what's the difference between data mining and a supercomputer?
Yeah, well,
I mean, that's like some people have that question. What's the difference of a data miner who has all these GPUs and supercomputing?
Well, let me phrase it a different way. Okay. So the supercomputers have been around for a while. So they've been around for a few decades, and they have primarily focused on essentially simulations, so of natural phenomena. So simulating weather would be probably the most common one. But for the 9 countries that have nuclear weapons, you use supercomputers to simulate nuclear explosions and to maintain that stockpile without doing any actual, nuclear explosions. You use them to simulate fluid dynamics, to design airplanes. I mean, there's all these things that you can do. And you need these incredible machines to run these simulations so that you can make these scientific discoveries. And in some cases, those lead to actual innovation kind of stuff. So that's high performance computing has been around a while, right? But artificial intelligence, again, that as a discipline has been around for a long time. But the convergence of these high performance computing machines and AI, that's a more recent thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, the first supercomputer ever designed specifically for AI was in 2018. So just 3 years ago. So before that, all the supercomputers in the world were mostly designed for high performance computing to support simulations, but not AI. So even today, if you look at the top 500 list, the 500 biggest computers in the world, a good chunk of them are still just high performance machines supporting scientific simulations, not AI. And so now what you have is you have a generation of computers, and NVIDIA played a big role in this, in converging the two. Mm-hmm. So now you've got these machines and data analytics. Okay, yes. is another one of the workloads that can benefit from this. So because the data lakes and the data sets are getting so huge that you can't really get value from it unless you can compute something with it. A great example of this, by the way, is astronomy. So if you go down like Chile, mm-hmm. which has more telescopes than anywhere in the world, because of where they are in the open sky. So Chile has incredible telescopes, and they capture like insane amounts of data. Like every night, it's like 100 petaflops of data. But they have to discard most of it for 2 reasons. They have to discard it because they don't know they can't store it. It's too expensive. But they also don't necessarily have all the computing power they need to make sense of it. And so they try to keep the data they think they need, right? And so but so they have so much opportunity to mine that data, but it's too expensive to store and too expensive to compute. So as storage comes down, and Microsoft just signed a partnership with them actually in January with Chile to help them address this problem. We're working with Chile as well, and so there's so much data and so many fields and domains that doesn't get looked at because no one has enough computing or storage to do that. So we're going to unlock so much innovation as we do that, And so the convergence of high performance computing and AI and data analytics, that's really driving the revolution.
As you just brought up, the fascinating, I'd say 2018 was the really first supercomputer for AI, and within obviously we're 2.5 years now, 3 years, AI is the forefront of everything, autonomous thinking, processing, the way we work. Of course, the pandemic did accelerate a lot because of everyone was stuck at home, but now we need machines to do a lot of these things from simple deliveries.
That's right.
Simple, so you can see that as you said, I think the technology was there. It just wasn't being optimized. And
it wasn't affordable.
This disaster we're going through has pushed it and accelerated it.
The pandemic is not just for AI. I mean, the pandemic has sort of accelerated the digitalization of society at an unbelievable scale. I mean, even when I was a little worried in doing my role, which often requires engagement with senior government officials around the world, that these were often face-to-face meetings. I mean, they didn't want to talk on the phone or do a Skype call. I mean, so the expectation was you'd fly to the country, you'd go through the ceremony of the meeting and that kind of thing. Very, very formal. And I was worried in March, like, how am I going to do my job? I mean, who's going to meet me? Who's going to jump? But the truth is, everyone adapted. Everyone adapted on up to the very high. I mean, I've had at least 4 or 5 meetings with heads of state since last March, and dozens of meetings with very senior officials in countries across the world, and it's completely normalized now. And so they just hop on the phone. I mean, I'm meeting with the Minister of Transportation for a large country tonight at 5:30, and it's just pretty normal. I mean, there's no it has become business and life. So that has accelerated the digitalization of business in a way that, of course, has been very beneficial for NVIDIA and other companies.
I mean, yeah, it's fascinating. You've been talking to all these other countries. Of course, the mission of leveling the playing field, giving everybody access to these computers. What all the concerns of, I mean, if you take all the data from, what are the concerns, insights for a lot of these countries looking at? Because a lot of them are some of them are third world, second world, countries that don't have that infrastructure of power, of data, of connection. Yeah. So what are their basic concerns when they come to you? It's like, how can we make this work? How can we make the system work?
So this is definitely a haves and have-nots situation. If you're a wealthy Western country, you're more focused on how will AI impact privacy and bias in data models and how that could institutionalize problems in society. And there are a lot of interesting and legitimate concerns to talk about. If you're a smaller, less developed country, it's not that those aren't concerns, but you have a bigger concern, which is, what if I don't have access to technology at all? How is that going to impact the prosperity and security of my country? And this is a problem. I mean, this is a real problem, because I think that we talk about the GDP and we talk about economic power and geopolitical power, and I think that the balance of power and the formula for dictating sort of projecting economic growth is being altered now by AI. And why is that? That's because the prior models and most of the industrialization of nations that led to prosperity in the last 100 years was based on building things like factories and hard physical assets. Now, those are still very important. I don't want to say manufacturing is not important, but in addition to that, now there's this whole new sort of opportunity to grow through digital assets, right? And you don't need factories. You don't need an army of people to build things. I mean, you need machines, but a relatively small company. And take NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a good example. I mean, NVIDIA, has less than 20,000 employees. Now, that may sound big, but let's just compare it to some other companies. I mean, Walmart has 1 million employees, right? Allied Security has 1 million employees, and they happen to be based here in Orange County. Microsoft has like 300,000 employees.
One of the biggest manufacturers, the Foxconn, Flextronics, all these guys have
millions of employees, right? So we have less than 20,000 employees. So relatively small company in the greater span of things, right? But look at the scale of the technology and innovation coming out of that. That's because a lot of our innovation is amplified through AI and through the digitalization of assets. It's software and it's other things. It's not, so even though we make hardware, but the truth is that a small company and a small country can punch far above their weight in this new era of AI. And so you take Canada as a good example. Canada's, I know, a big landmass, big country in that sense, but it's a fraction of the size of the United States, right? It's about 8-9% the size of the United States and a fraction the size of the economy. However, they are very successful in AI. And they are world leaders in deep learning. They have Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver are considered world-class AI hubs. Every company, including NVIDIA, has a research center in one of those, in some cases two. And that country, again, despite it being much smaller in terms of population and GDP, is absolutely a world leader in AI. And I think that it's not just going to be the biggest countries. So I think that's what's very, very interesting about AI. It's changing the formula for growth, and it's changing the formula for success.
Was that becomes AI, the AI revolution? In that end, that we are in the beginning of it. When do you foresee this type of change of that AI would be used? More than 50% of our lives, AI, we're being controlled by. Operating by AI.
It's such a big part of our lives already that we don't know, right? Yeah. I mean, we don't all talk to our toasters and our refrigerators, but AI is everywhere. I mean, we're all searching. We're all using search engines. We're all using our phones. We're all in cars. And even though cars don't drive themselves fully yet, they're increasingly packed with AI.
Which brings me to talk about the Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, we're super excited about that deal. I mean, we announced a major partnership in August, and we've been working with Mercedes for years, so not a new relationship. And already there's NVIDIA technology in Mercedes now, but this new partnership that we announced in August, which will, I think, go fully into effect in 2024, is that we will be essentially building the software-defined infrastructure that powers all the Mercedes that roll off the line, and it's not just sending them some chips. We will be designing and running essentially that it's a true partnership, and we're very excited about that. But these cars may not be fully autonomous by 2024, but they will have a lot of autonomous features, right? They're going to get, it's a level thing, right? And they're going to keep moving up the levels, and they will increasingly help people drive safer and provide that shield, to reduce accidents and people. You can fall asleep at the wheel. Actually, my wife, she will tell you that when she was in college, she fell asleep driving home from college one night and going home and rolled her car and almost killed herself. That won't happen anymore, because when people fall asleep in cars, the car will know. The car will see that your head is fallen, that your eyes are closed,
Yes.
and the car will slow down and slowly pull off the side of the road. Done. You're drunk and you're losing, you're clearly driving erratically and you're not safe, and you jump the median going to the other side of the road. That won't happen anymore, right? Eventually those cars will just not permit that behavior. It will detect that erratic. It will detect you're about to jump the lane. It will stop the car. It will move it off to the side. In fact, Sweden has a really aggressive agenda on this. I forget what they call it officially, but they have a goal of 0 deaths by cars. 0. Under any conditions. Doesn't matter what for. Doesn't matter why. But no one will die from a car accident by like 2030 or something. So they have a very aggressive goal, and they're working with car companies, and they want to be the first country on earth where no one dies from a car accident ever again. And you can't do that. And there's a lot of ways you can make roads safer, and there's things you can do, but the cars can prevent accidents. So even before you have full autonomy, you'll have much higher levels of safety, and I think everyone's pretty excited about that. And that includes, of course, in the Mercedes and other companies that we're working with. So that's pretty cool. And then outside of cars, we're up in satellites and in both. It's just AI isn't one thing. It's not in one place. It is just this. It is software that learns, that operates from the cloud to the edge, and it's just going to affect everything we're doing. So I don't know how to answer your question whether it's like 50% or 80%, but it is. Look, since the dawn of time. Now we're going back 20,000 years of not time, since the dawn of sort of
human evolution.
Humans,
humans.
Since the first humans walked the earth.
Correct.
We've been we can kind of catalog and inventory what are these things called general purpose technologies, and it starts out with the domestication of plants and animals. Literally, 20,000 years ago, and so you go forward. There's only been like 27 general purpose technologies since the dawn of civilization. That's it, and AI is the latest. It is the 27th general purpose technology, and it materially changes every facet of society. It has significant implications for the ways societies are organized and governed and operate. There are risks to manage too, like anything else, but it is one of these things. So that's already happened. That's not a to be happening. That's a happening right now. And so I think whenever I talk to young people, in high school or college, and I say, whatever you do, make sure AI is part of your curriculum. You don't have to become a coder or an engineer, but you at least understand the implication of AI for your field, because some fields will be less relevant. Some fields will be more relevant, and there'll be new jobs, but don't act like this ain't happening, because it's happening right now, and it's going to completely change the workforce. It's going to change, so it's just playing out already.
From someone that works in the AI field, should there be fear? Is there fear or anything about AI taking things over, or we can't control?
I don't have any fear. There are lots of camps, and there are some very people like Elon Musk and other scientists who've made these sort of headline-y type statements. AI will be the last invention we ever have, and that kind of thing. I just don't have that anxiety. Because I see it for what it is, which is, yes, there are AI can do things that we would register as superhuman, no question. But they're not human, and they're still a tool for humans. And so the only thing we should fear are the humans, humans and what humans will do with AI. AI by itself is morally agnostic. It's morally neutral. It's implicitly just ones and zeros. So it's really what people do with it. So if we're concerned about AI, we should put curbs on human behavior. We should regulate what humans do with AI. AI itself is just whatever it is. It's an invention. It's a human invention. I think that it will absolutely gain qualities of human intelligence and intuition, and potentially artificial general intelligence will arrive within our lifetime, potentially. But I think I just don't think the bigger risk. I think the much bigger risk is that you don't harness the power of AI, like we're talking about healthcare. You don't harness it for all the good that it can do. Or you're in a part of the world where you don't have even the option to. And so I think that's super important, right? And so yes, today, it looks like everyone's online, but we know that there's 1 billion people who aren't. Yeah. So that's a problem, right? And there's 190 countries, but only 30 have a supercomputer. That's a problem because those other 50, 60, 100 countries can't compete, right? So that's gonna affect their economic trajectory in the future, right? And everyone who lives in that country. So I think leveling the playing field and democratizing access to technology is a far more important policy initiative. But I also acknowledge that there's a lot of risks. So, of course, you need to have people focusing on the risks, too. And that's a good thing. Government and academia and think tanks, they have to focus on the risks. That's their job. We need them to do that. We want them to do that. We want them to look at what should be regulated, what should be protected, what should be prevented. But those are human behaviors we want to worry about, quite frankly. AI by itself is really of great benefit to society as long as we do the right things with it.
That brings my question to security. Of cybersecurity, as we know, the last few years, hacks, these type of things are coming in. And with smart computing, do they build AI to the point that it's smart enough not to be hacked? I mean, I don't know. These are simple
I'm not
questions.
a cybersecurity expert, but I will say that when I joined NVIDIA 2 years ago, it was less of a conversation than it is today. It's a big part of the conversation today, no question. And I think it is in general. And I from what I can see, the new generation of cyber tools and cyber defense is going to be AI based. It has to be because for the same reason that AI in general does so well, it's able to absorb information and make observations and detect patterns at a scale that humans could never. So, I love movies when there's been a bunch of sort of cyber hacking type movies where you'll see like someone from a computer screen. Oh, I see it. I'm going to stop it. I got it. I can see the person hacking. I can code. Oh, no, I'm getting them out. Give me a second. Hold on. I'm going to block them. I mean, they try to dramatize and humanize this thing. It's so ludicrous. I mean, this is happening at nanoseconds, we're talking billions of attacks in a minute. There's no human kid on the screen. I'll get it out. It's not possible. So we are entering the era of AI versus AI. So it's always humans, of course, will always play the overarching role. But the fact is, these attacks and these defensive moves will happen so fast that you can't. No human could keep up. So we might be monitoring the system, we might be curating the system, and ultimately have control over the system. But the actual operational sort of nature of these defensive shields, from a cyber perspective, they will operate at a machine speed. They will have to keep up with the ingenuity of of the hackers who are also not sitting there just hacking their way through. They're writing programs that are then studying and learning to identify gaps and then entering through those gaps. And so you need to operate in the same way. So I absolutely see it. In fact, interestingly enough, I don't want to mention the country, but for the first time, we have these partnerships with countries all across the world. And they sometimes they're general, like we just want to work with you and help us, and sometimes they have a focus like transportation or healthcare. For the very first time, we have a country that said we want to partner with you around cyber defense. Like we're going to be setting up a cyber defense center of excellence, and we really want your help to put in the infrastructure and support to help us do that. And so that my guess is that won't be the last one that I do like that. And so I expect that's going to become more of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that, because you go to defense, cyber warfare, going into, or just general human living, our lives are connected to a mainframe. Everything's data. Our lives are from the handheld. They know how we operate. I mean, everybody's seen the famous movie now, Social Dilemma, is how the systems can predict what your next move, and they can change your perspective on certain things, which also is scary for when we get into childhood, kids and people going into different directions of the cult followings or the followings into
the echo chambers.
Echo chambers that we get into. There is always a fear on that. And of course, I know there's always, as you say, with all the positives, negatives always follow that, because it's never that. But what are the answers? How can we answer it? How can the technology answer it? How can technology, cure people, cure cancer, as you would say, cure the human race, cure the pandemic, protect us from cyber warfare, protect us from war in general between humans. How can this all happen? And it's so fascinating that how far we've come in the last, as you say, 10 years, and AI is only 3 years old.
Well, AI is 50 years old.
Meaning like
it's 50 years old, but the modern era of AI was probably about 10. So most techno wizard geekite would say that the current AI sort of era, because there's been a couple of eras, but the current modern era of AI probably started around 2012. And in 2012, one of the significant things that happened is that and again, I didn't even know this until I joined NVIDIA. I mean, it's just interesting that NVIDIA played a role in this. But in 2012, there's this famous sort of competition of basically trying to develop algorithms and basically AI
computer
models.
Scientists, probably.
Well, yeah, but specifically for computer vision,
okay,
so to recognize images, right, and to teach a machine to recognize images, and up until that point, in 2012, they were at a certain performance level. In 2012, they applied the deep learning for the first time. That was the first time it was applied in sort of in a meaningful way to this problem of let's let a machine learn how to identify an object versus the other ways they were doing it, and it just crushed the competition. And in fact, it was the first time that a machine's ability to perceive an object exceeded a human's. So that was the first time it was actually able to recognize an object even more accurately than a human would. And so that was the turning point. And that was the year that Google, I think, very publicly announced that all of their current AI programs stopped and they pivoted to deep learning. And that's also why a lot of their products, including their translation products, things, the performance went skyrocketed, the accuracy, the success. So they and others attribute. So, and again, the same thing with self-driving cars. So 2012, and we learned also, NVIDIA at the time, again, I wasn't here, but NVIDIA learned that the GPU architecture and the system they provide end up being the ideal engine for that architecture. And they didn't know that at the time. That was a discovery in the field. It wasn't a plan they cooked up. And like, holy cow, this is amazing. This is a great use of our technology. Let's go to, but they had the intent, but they had the foresight to pivot, But anyway, so we're about 10 years in to the modern era of AI. So just to give you a perspective.
That modern era, to the generation or my generation, your generation, AI is really into that modern side because everything's handheld. We live in the digital world. We didn't live in the 2000s was just starting, but now we live in a digital world. Our human behaviors through digital.
That's right.
We cannot live without having a handheld device to operate ourselves daily. It just doesn't happen. So that's really living in this modern era. But moving forward to that, let's get into this some final questions I have is quantum computing.
So I brought a book.
Yeah.
So
quantum physics.
Quantum physics for babies.
Yeah.
I'm not a quantum scientist. Okay. So I bought this book. This is a ball. This ball has zero energy, right? An electron can be here or there. All electrons have energy. This electron has the least, So I was trying to, this energy is quantized. So I was trying to figure out, what that's. You're a quantum physicist. So I was trying to figure out how quantum physics works. Here's the thing. Here's what I would say about quantum computing, and it has nothing to do with the actual underlying physics because I'm not qualified to go into that. What I would say is that you have sort of classical Van Neumann computing, which is the traditional computing that we have today, by and large. And on top, and then after that, you've got GPU computing, general purpose computing using graphical chips and the software around that. And now what's coming next, and quantum's not the only. There's neuromorphic computing. There's a few others that are kind of in development, but quantum definitely gets the headlines. And a lot of countries are investing in that possibility. All of these computing platforms will coexist. One doesn't replace the other. So you need each one, essentially. They all serve a purpose, is my point. And they solve different problems. So, within all of our computers, we have a CPU, right? So there was 8 GPUs and 1 CPU, right? And that's important because certain functions, things you want to put on a CPU, that's the right processor for that. So you don't want to use a GPU for things that actually would work more efficiently on a CPU. And the same thing with quantum computing. Certain kinds of mathematics and certain kinds of problem sets will work really well in quantum computing. But some not a lot, not everything will. I think there's only 4 right now that have been identified that actually will work on a quantum computer. So the vast majority of programming will never be on a quantum computer. There'll be certain kinds of specific problems. But quantum computers will be, potentially thousands of times more powerful than other kinds of computers. And so for certain kinds of problem sets, you will want a quantum computer. Now, not many people will own a quantum computer. So, unlike where we are putting GPU computing on every desktop, that's not going to happen with quantum computing. Quantum computing will exist in the cloud because they're super expensive, complex machines. So there will be a certain number of them around the world. and you will access them through the cloud. You know, you won't be buying them at Best Buy, you know, anytime soon. But they will be mostly used by governments and then, you know, certain industries, you know, material science, oil and gas, auto. Certain industries will use them to solve specific problems. So, but it's important because that technology. But and I think it's slowly getting there. But you know, classical CPU computing and GPU computing are here right now, and so that is driving all of the innovation. Quantum computing is what's next, but it will be on top of, not a replacement of, and it will be another layer of the computing sort of stack. And quite frankly, quantum computing will produce so much data, you'll need GPU computing to even make sense of it. So
to translate it.
Well, because it'll generate, you know, crazy amounts of data, and then that data will need to be mined and modeled and all that kind of thing. So you know, most likely you will have sort of quantum computing, GPU computing, and sort of classical computing all in the same stack everywhere, and so they'll just work hand in hand. So it's all part of the sort of this broader technology equation. But it is incredible. I mean, if you even take it with a grain of salt, some of the predictions. I mean, we're talking about computers that are 10,000 times faster than the world's fastest computer today. I mean, again, numbers that are hard to grasp because, I mean, the fastest computer today could already do, like, you know, 100 trillion calculations a second. Something that's 10,000 times faster than that. I mean, it's
too many zeros.
Too many zeros. Yeah. So it's not, you know, it's not easy to consume that. But you are talking about superhuman abilities to solve certain kinds of problems, and again, the benefits to society will be staggering. But from a democratization perspective, you don't want to be left out, right? And so that's why, you know, increasingly countries are investing in quantum physics, quantum computing, and certainly there's a race not just to have the fastest computer, but to just have a supercomputer. And I think so. My personal ambition is that is that right now only about 30 countries or so are on the top 500 list. I'd like that to be 60. Okay. So I'd like to see twice as many countries have supercomputing within their walls, domestic supercomputing, and for whatever purpose, doesn't matter. But and whatever they buy it from, whatever they use it for, we just want to see more countries be able to participate. So, I mean, imagine 2021 if only 30 countries had cars. Just think about it. I mean, almost like laughable. Like, how is that possible? I mean, of course, everyone has a car. But that wasn't true 60, 70 years ago. That wasn't true. I mean, in the 1940s or 50s, there were only a few countries that had cars, right? I mean, and only a few countries had roads. So anyway, I think that's where we are today, and I'm looking forward to, you know.
Yeah, and you come back to that. So it's a good point you brought up. But these other countries that you're working with, like, data is key. You need data to function, do any type of algorithm. You need data. But a lot of these countries, the people are not connected. You don't have their data.
Well, they don't have data. They don't have the data, especially smaller countries. Yeah. They don't have their data. Whatever data they have, it's actually not big enough. So even if they had the computer, sets, they don't have the data sets. Yeah. Some of that is being solved, though, through consortiums. I mean, you have sort of regional consortiums like in the European Union. A lot of small countries in Europe, right? You know, a lot of small countries, but they're able to tap into the European-wide sort of data sets, and even the European supercomputing infrastructure, which might be situated in 7 or 8 countries, but they kind of share it, and there's a charter to support, you know, countries all across the continent. So Europe does a pretty good job actually of having these regional initiatives, both for computing and data. Frankly, I don't know anyone else in the world region that does as good a job as they do. I mean, there's other regional initiatives, but not as strong as Europe.
Yeah, because I mean, of course, like yourself, I've traveled all over the place, especially a lot of third world countries, and I can see there's a lot of populations say they're not connected. They don't have any data on them. They don't, and the infrastructure of the country, they don't even if they can have a supercomputer, but the people aren't connected to get the data or to extract the data from them. They might have a handheld device, but that's the only thing they have. But their home, because the smart homes, that's data. Yeah. Everybody, how they operate, how people operate the day, how consumption they use. You know, these are people, we can get all into those layers of that to
smart buildings,
everything. You know, that smart helps roads. Bring efficiency and power and everything we do and how we operate.
That's right.
But it's moving to that aspect of, but it's so fascinating, and I love the initiative that you said, and you're leading that for these countries, or bringing that computing power.
I'm trying to do my part. I mean, I think there's, and again, in fairness, there's other companies in the constellation of technology, like the cloud companies, are also have more or less the same mission in their own way. They want to democratize access to technology. They want to make it less expensive, you know, easier, take down the barriers. So, you know, I think NVIDIA and I think other companies in the space. I think the technology companies have sometimes they're kind of painted, with this one common brush of big tech and everything. But there's just a lot of good as well, and there's a lot of value. And when you're in a country where you don't have access to technology, then you see the void it creates in the economy and opportunity and healthcare and the transformational impact it has. When you put a single GPU powered laptop into a lab in the middle of Africa, I mean, that's a game changer for everyone that touches that lab. And to people here, it's like, oh, it's just a laptop. No, it's not just a laptop. It's a time machine. You've put a time machine into a lab. People can now do in an hour what could take them a month, or they could do something that could take them a lifetime. And yes, you've changed a lot of things. You didn't just give them a laptop. And so that's the part that I think that's the side of it that not everyone thinks about, because they just immediately run to the bad headline. And I think there's more to the story.
Yeah. Coming to this robot.
Oh yeah. Well, I have a little bit of a collection of robots. This is a great one. I mean, this baby. I think if we turn it, let's see here. Can I? I don't. You know what? I think I left a little spinning thing home. But this is like a 1940s or 50s toy. This really actually. Oh, here's the thing. Let's use it. You can see this is what robots looked like 60 years ago. So here you go. It was going for a second. Did it stop?
You have to wind it up a little bit more. Oh, there it is.
Look at that. Woo-hoo.
That's what it was.
There it is, baby. Robots. You have nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear with this. It's a little bit scary, but it's nothing to fear. It is not going to do any harm, and it's not going to do any good either.
But it's amazing where we are today, and this was scary to a lot of people back then, that there was robots or something that can move like this.
I know. You know what's interesting? My hairstylist, Alan, and I talk about stuff, right? And he once asked me a reasonable question. Yeah. He's like, "Do I have anything to fear with my job? Like, will robots and machines ever?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a really interesting question." So I did some homework. And it turns out that for the most part, they've had not much success in inventing a hairstylist robot. There is one. There actually is one in Japan, and it's a pretty big machine. And you stick your head into it, and it does your hair. But it has not been very successful, and they do not anticipate that hairstyling will give way to robotics, right? And it's interesting, if you do look at some things that we would think is very mundane tasks, like folding laundry, and things, it's actually very, very hard. I mean, a child can fold a shirt, but you might need to spend $50 million to build a robot that can do that. So there are so many human tasks that machines just cannot do, whether it's because of the physical manipulation or the amount of decisions.
Or they could do. It's too expensive. It doesn't make any sense to invest.
Yeah, I'm not sure it makes sense to create it. But even if they did, I'm not sure it would be as good. The creativity of cutting hair and the details and the decisions, I'm not sure it makes sense to create a hairstylist robot, right? But other machines obviously will do other things for us, and whether they're physical machines like this. And the reason why I brought this is because when you talk about AI, sometimes people have difficulty understanding it unless you show them something. Like, this is a robot, it's smart, it can do this or that. And it's funny because AI is really a relatively boring subject. I mean, it is software. I mean, it's hard to show software. So you can talk about it, but it's kind of cool to look at it. So people think about robots as AI, but what's actually historically true is almost all of the robots, up until let's say 10 years ago, were basically dumb. I mean, they all just followed rules. If this, then that. There was no actual AI in those robots, for the most part. And so I think we're now just entering this era of smart machines that make decisions and navigate and do things and are not just following a set of rules. Right, and so the sort of vacuuming robot is actually, that's AI. I mean, that robot has looked at your environment, it understands your environment, it navigates, it stops, and makes decisions. That's about that's kind of a great example, and the most successful consumer robot would be the vacuum ones. But the wide scale robots that are out there are actually pretty dumb. But that's going to change. And so we're entering this era of these machines, and some of these machines we'll see, and some of them we won't. Some of them will be sort of behind the scenes, but like building stuff and assembly robots, engineering robots, construction robots. I mean, building buildings and those kinds of things, roads. But it's happening now. It really is all across the world. In almost every country, I have examples, that I come face to face with where industries and or government agencies are using machines to improve what they do or make a job more safe. I mean, if you're working on an oil rig, that's a good job, pays well, but there are certain jobs on an oil rig that are really unsafe. It'd be really nice to have a machine do that, quite frankly.
Putting down the pipes is very unsafe.
Well, doing inspections.
Okay.
Yeah. Climbing, it's much safer to take a $2,000 drone and have it fly around the rig, take 6,000 photos, stitch those photos together, apply algorithms to identify potential cracks in the
structure pane,
and then to do an analysis versus paying a human to climb, look at things itself. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, the human could look at the report and make a decision, right? But does he have to risk his life climbing up and people get injured or killed all the time. So making jobs safer, for humans is a great role for machines, right? And so it isn't about replacing work, but it is happening really in every industry.
Well, I can see. I mean, the latest thing we could talk about another time is that the Neuralink, which that's called somewhere else, but that is that is in the future. That's the future to come, and
we're all going to be cyborgs, right?
Somehow, some way, they can get at another guy, the Elon. He probably thinks he's an alien or he's a robot because he thinks of all these. But it's fascinating having brains like him and Jensen, all of these people out there, the visionaries that come in. And
I'm very fortunate to be in his orbit. It's a real privilege. It's an incredible honor to be able to learn and to listen to someone who's clearly one of those rare humans, that operates in that zone of cerebral energy that is just most of us will never have, but we're lucky to be exposed to that. Yeah, and there's a few people. They're just and then to unlock the imagination of all the others people. I mean, there's 18,000 engineers or whatever at NVIDIA, and they're all every day, inventing the future, and there's likewise at other companies and and that kind of thing. It's exciting to be part of that. And then you guys are doing your part, right?
Well, doing our part.
I mean, let's not forget IBS. I mean, you guys are you're doing your part, in providing the components and bringing the pieces together.
The supply chain,
the supply chain.
Supply chain.
Let's talk about the supply chain. Yeah. I mean, we all act like that. What is that until you don't have it? It's not really talked about, and then suddenly it's the main topic of Washington, D.C.
I mean, that's one thing I get into, and supply chain is what we're into currently today. I mean, AI is the first thing, computers thinking, but it's broken, and everything's lean. Everybody builds off lean process, lean process.
Super efficient,
and this lean, and computers trying to do EDI, or they're going to do API integrations that people talk, they call.
It's all great when nothing's broken.
Nothing, yeah.
Everything works. It's awesome.
And you throw a disaster like a pandemic into it, or natural disaster like an earthquake into some region, and it completely snaps
the supply chain.
And it snaps the supply chain, and everybody's feeling it. As I know yourself, no matter what, you're not connected to the product, but you're connected because everybody's come after.
It's a big deal. Yeah. It's a big deal. I think the race towards efficiency in the last 20 years has almost backfired because it's not resilient.
Yeah.
Right. It's efficient, but not resilient.
It's funny as I look at it because we've been in the distribution field for 40 years of selling. I'm selling components, the process, but as much as we're the hardware. Yeah. But the software has evolved much faster.
Sure.
The hardware has evolved, but the supply chain hasn't evolved with the technology. Yeah. And that's something that we have to all work on because that will be detrimental to getting products, or we get into a complication when you get. When the automotive industry is going to lose $60 billion this year.
It's crazy. They're idling factories.
Yeah, and that's just automotive.
That's
it's every other, and that's because it's public. It's knowledge out there.
That's right.
All companies, NVIDIA, every company out there.
A factory is, the auto ecosystem is huge. So if a factory is being idled, there's like 100 other companies that also are being idled that you don't know
that
about.
Are related.
They're related. They serve that factory.
They're contracted.
Yeah. I mean, it ripples through the economy. It's huge.
Yeah, right? we have. I mean, if the tier ones are feeling it, we still have smaller tier 2, tier 3 guys we support. They don't build 1 million boards a month. They build 1,000 a month.
Yeah.
But they have 95% of the board. They're missing 3 parts.
And they can't ship it.
And it takes 40 weeks to get these parts. And these companies, again, they can't build. These smaller companies can't. They don't have public funds that can keep the company going. And this is it's detrimental to production and
there might be one plant in the world that makes it, or two, right?
And a lot of them are located in Japan or some, in China, Taiwan, or Thailand, Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan's the chip center, but that's another thing. Again, we could talk about the chip sides, the TCMCs. They are the leaders of the world, but all eggs in one basket sometimes can lead to this type of shortages of the wafers because all companies are fabless. Now, most companies are fabless. Most companies are fabless.
It's sort of like, it's amazing because, again, I'm new to the industry. And when I joined in 2019, I started learning about some of these details. That's when I learned personally that 80% of the world's high-end semiconductors are made not just in one country, but in one plant, in one country, and I mean, we're talking the backbone of the digital economy sitting in a tiny country, 100 miles from China, right? And in a somewhat controversial area. I mean, there's a lot of tension in the region. I mean, that is, I don't think people realize until now in a very significant way, because now it's on top of mind. In fact, the Eric Schmidt and Admiral Work just released that National Security Commission on AI report, which is amazing, and it's 700 pages. I haven't read all of it, but if you just read the first 5 or 10 pages, they just nail it really early. It's one of the things that they just bring up, and that we just, this is a strategic urgency for the country, and it's true for Europe too. I mean, it's so. But TSMC and Samsung now are scheduled to build massive campuses in Phoenix and Texas, I think, with 20, 30, $40 billion in factories. Yeah, to start sort of reducing the concern, and because that takes years. So
it takes years. We're not like other countries who've been trying, like they could, because there's a lot involved. But thankfully, the administration has signed over to get this accelerated through, because we have a lot of layers to get.
Oh, through. Like I know in Shanghai they built it. I think the world's newest airport, like anywhere in the world, it was just built in Shanghai. And they have 2 now massive airports. So they just opened it up. And I remember watching a video on YouTube about it, and it was insane because, in the U.S. it takes 20 years to build an airport. I mean, when the amount of sort of sign-offs and environmental studies and all the things that have
regulations,
to happen. By the time they build it, like they start a project in 1990, and they hope by 2010 they have an airport, right? They built like one of the world's largest airports in like 18 months, it's gargantuan. It's like the largest single terminal ever made, and its planes are taking off now, and the whole thing was less than 2 years. I mean, you just can't do that in the United States. Yeah. It's not possible.
These are things that we got to see improvement in the future for us to be still leaders, because at points, other countries like that, they build faster. You can get at the end of the day, it's like computing power.
Yeah. I think Eric and the other people on the inside actually have offered some very pragmatic advice, which is, AI supremacy is nice. Yeah. Why don't we just focus on keeping up?
Yeah, infrastructure.
Well, no. Let's just let the goal be to keep up, like to be competitive. I mean, I'm not sure winning is really the game anymore, because we're just it's not that we can't win and we won't win in certain areas, but let's not focus on winning. It's not a. I don't think that's kind of a mutual exclusive battle, because that suggests there'll be a loser. I don't think that's the case here. Frankly, and it's not just the U.S. and China. I mean, the fact is, again, small countries can punch above their weight. Every country needs to be a participant in the global AI sort of ecosystem. Every country doesn't need to have the same kind of capabilities. Every country doesn't need to invest the same, but they all need to be active in building their ecosystem. They have to have their strategy. They need to invest in their infrastructure. They all need to do certain to whatever works for them, but they have to be doing it. And I think that there'll be a lot of winners, quite frankly. But I think from a U.S.-China perspective, I agree with some of the recommendations of the report, which is let's just focus on be competitive. Yes. Let's just because if we don't do certain things, we won't even be competitive in science and in business and other things. And so let's not just focus on winning. I think it's there's a lot that we have to do, right? I'm hopeful this administration will take the report seriously. I mean, it was not a government report; it was done outside the government. But we're hoping that it's read and taken seriously. But I also think that report has implications for all the countries in the world. It's not just about the U.S. and China. I think every country should look at this report and look at this as this is potentially what we all have to be looking at to just maintain our sovereignty, our security, prosperity in the future. These are the things we're going to need to do. Some of these things we're doing, some of these things we're not doing. Like, I think the formula is changing. And I think the report really hits that on the head. So even though the focus of the report was probably U.S. versus China to some degree, I don't think that's the conversation. I think is every country on earth needs to take a look at themselves and say, what do we need to do to...
What are our core values? What can we offer? What are we good at?
And how do we enable our citizens to realize their full potential, to have lives and to thrive, to stay healthy, How do we defend them against future infectious breakouts? How do we make sure that young people who graduate college have great opportunities to realize their dreams in the country? How can we help young researchers make great discoveries here and not have to go somewhere else? So all these things, I think, are encaptured in that report to some degree. And so I think that report has significance for every country, and I do recommend.
I would love to look at it.
Just download it. It's just it's 740 pages. But one interesting anecdote just in the beginning, they make an interesting historical point. They're like, back in 1950 or whatever, President Eisenhower signed off on this monumental bill to build the country's highway system, and it was like $10 billion, which in today's dollars is about $100 billion. But it was a big deal, right? $10 billion. It's a big down payment on transportation. But it was really about economic growth. I mean, we were not. If you couldn't drive a truck from New York to L.A., then that was going to impact the economy, right? You need to be able to deliver goods and the free flow of commerce and all that kind of stuff. So they equate that decision to the one that we need to make now. That President Biden, as well as other governments, need to be looking at their countries and saying, what down payment do we need to make
today for the future
to make sure that the free flow of ideas and innovation in a digital economy, increasingly defined by intelligent and autonomous machines, which is very different than the economy that President Eisenhower was facing in 1950. So this is
he was right there with one of those.
He was. This is about circa 1950. So I think there's a new economy. There's new requirements to succeed that economy, and I think that the World Bank knows this. The OECD knows this. So I think that countries need to reassess: are we making the right investments to make sure that we're competitive and relevant in that new economy? And companies can ask the same question. You could ask the same question of your company, right? You're just saying about software and logistics. Yeah. So this is a company question. This is a country level question, and it's even a city level question.
Well, it's being prepared, having BCP, business continuity plans in place, and just looking, and just like you said, for every human living, especially every American, what's the future? What do you see to keep the health, life, wellness, and the global community together? That we prosper all together instead of just having the race. There shouldn't be any race. It should just be a prosperity together. Because race causes competition. It causes a winner and a loser, and sometimes it goes into.
And I don't think that's the way this is going to play out. I this is not the Cold War. I don't think it's a win-lose kind of thing. This is the new normal. This is again a general purpose technology that's infusing through every facet of the world. It's not just a weapon. And I think that it's. I think it can do a lot of good. It can do some harm, and so there's important that we, again, that parts of the world and academia and policymakers pay attention to that and do what they need to do to protect humanity, and follow their values. But I also think that countries have to. All countries look. If you look at every national AI plan, and I have. The number one goal of every plan is the same, which is economic growth, and that's why AI. I mean, there's other things in the plan, and they have other branches of the plan, but that is the number one goal. The number one reason why countries care about AI is they want to get their share of what's anticipated to be trillions of dollars in growth, trillions. And it doesn't matter if it's McKinsey or PwC or Deloitte or Accenture. All the big firms have done studies on this, and they've all basically said the same thing. Somewhere between 12 and 18 trillion dollars in net new GDP on a global basis. It's a big number, and your ability as a country to grab a piece of that and to be able to distribute that new wealth to your citizens, to have that potential in your country, that depends on the decisions you make right now, right? The investments you make, the policies you place. And so I think that's why there is a race, but it isn't that no one country's going to grab all that, but it's are you getting your share? And I do think that I think heads of state have a obligation to make those decisions, like Eisenhower did. And I see that some are. There's no question. Some countries are absolutely all over it. Some other countries are a little distracted, and for good reason. But I think that's what's playing out.
Well, we're closing this up.
Sure.
What I always say, because one thing is, my purpose for doing these talks and podcasts with thought leaders, influence in industries, is to also build awareness to the new generation. So what is your comment to the new generation of what's going for the future and what they should focus on and go into the technology realm?
Well, everyone doesn't have not everyone's built to be a coder or an engineer. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a programmer. I don't have the sort of natural wiring to do that engineering skills. But I have a career in this industry, right? I mean, there's a lot of other non-engineering roles in the tech space, right? And as AI becomes this prominent thing in so many industries, I think it's just ask the questions. I mean, here's a funny, if not vulnerable, revelation. Everything I know about AI, I learned on the internet. I didn't go to school for it. I mean, I went to, I studied industrial labor relations at Cornell. Then I got a law degree at NYU. You know, I then actually was a visiting guest lecturer for many years at Harvard Medical School. I've done a lot of other lectures, but I have never studied or got a degree in AI or computer science, right? But I've accumulated a lot of knowledge, right? And I've accumulated it through conversation and through networking and through reading and through whatever, and through observation and synthesis. I mean, so you have to be a lifelong learner, right? But you do not need to be an engineer to participate in. Now, if you are an engineer, that's awesome and good for you, and go forth and engineer. But this is not just about engineering. It's about there's a lot of roles around the technology, from designing AI experiences to managing the risks of AI to whatever, So I just think that's I think you just have to be aware and accept the fact that when you go to college, they may not have a degree in a specific topic. That's okay. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You could even be an artist, like a musician. AI is changing music too. I mean, you're going to see a lot of automated music production as well. Interesting point. You cannot make a Hollywood movie without NVIDIA. You cannot win an Academy Award for special effects without NVIDIA, because you need the high performance computing and artificial intelligence that enables this new generation of special effects to do your job, right? So they know that, but other industries are sort of coming online. So I think the answer is just keep your eyes open. Don't worry about whether you're a geekoid engineer. Just understand that this technology is going to affect everything you do. Even if you're a cook, it's going to affect what you do. There's really, maybe a hairstylist. That might be the one job where you are good. Just go forth and cut hair. AI is not going to be coming for you at all. But I think everyone else should probably pay attention.
Yeah. And as Maya always say, stay curious. Stay curious. Stay curious.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Keith.
That was awesome,
been a pleasure. It's been
great.
awesome. For everybody out there, remember, be smart, be thoughtful, be generous. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again.
Cheers.